Hi, in this video we're going to discuss how to perform routine maintenance and some troubleshooting on your Redline SFR regulator. You're going to need a few items. You're going to need your gun end fitting, the adjuster wrench that came with your regulator, a small pair of needle nose pliers, a paper clip that we're going to straighten out and put a small hook in the end. We'll use that to remove some internal components of the regulator. And a long thin tool of some sort. A long skinny Allen wrench works great. We're going to use this to apply some grease and to stack our springs on when we go to reinstall the springs in the regulator. Some paper towel and maybe some Q-tips to clean down inside. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to take your gun end fitting and install that into the quick disconnect on the regulator. If you've got just a hose coming out of here, a single disconnect system, just install this in the end of the hose. What that's going to do is it's going to relieve any excess pressure that may be inside the regulator, and it's also going to break the vacuum that can develop on the back side of the piston when you go to pull the piston out. So once we've done that, remove our tournament lock end cap. We're going to take our adjuster wrench. We're going to remove the adjuster. Set that aside. You can see here one of the springs is stuck in the end of the adjuster. If you're missing a spring, look in the adjuster. They end up sticking there sometimes. We're going to take and just dump out the rest of the springs. Sometimes one of the springs will stick on the piston, sometimes not. If it does, just pull it off when we go to reassemble. Now we're going to take our small needle nose. We're going to grab the shaft of the piston here and gently pull it out. We'll set that aside. Now I don't know if you can see down in here or not, but there's a brass part. It looks like so. We're going to use our adjuster wrench to remove that. That's the reg seat assembly. When you go to do this, you're going to want to push down on the adjuster wrench to compress this spring and pin. That's going to allow you to get a much better purchase with the wrench in the hex on the reg seat assembly. So we're going to remove that. Here the pin has come out with it. Sometimes it'll happen, usually not. The reg seat assembly is actually three pieces. You've got the top seat, the bottom seat, and in between is the O-ring that's the reg seat itself. Take the wrench, push that O-ring out. The reg seat O-ring is a 90 durometer urethane O-ring, should last a long time. Now we're going to take our tool that we've made from a paper clip with the hook, pull the spring out, set that aside. Now we're going to pull out this washer and O-ring that are in the bottom and just hook those guys out. And there's still one O-ring left inside. There's this O-ring. For normal maintenance, you do not need to remove that O-ring. Just leave it in place. We'll talk about issues that may arise later and when you would need to take that O-ring out. So now that we've got it apart, we're going to take our paper towel, wipe any grease out, any dirt, water paper towel up, put it way down in there, get any dirt and grease that's in there out. You can also go in there with Q-tips, reach way down inside, get any dirt and grease that's in there, remove all that. Just make sure you're not leaving Q-tip fuzz down inside there. And that's it. Everything's taken apart, cleaned all the old grease out, any dirt, and now we can go and reassemble the regulator. To do that, again, wipe off all your parts. Make sure this O-ring is nice and clean. There's no old grease or dirt on it. We're going to drop that in. We're going to take our wrench and we're going to make sure that this O-ring is lying flat on the bottom of the regulator. Once we've done that, again, clean the brass washer, make sure there's no dirt or grease on there. We're going to drop this brass washer down in there. Same thing, use the wrench, make sure it's laying flat. Once it's laying flat, we're actually going to use the wrench to, we're going to push down on that brass washer, and that's going to seat this O-ring in the little groove it has at the bottom of the regulator. Now that we've done that, we can take our grease, take our small wrench here, put a little bit of grease on that, and we're going to just lube up the inside of that O-ring. Again, clean any dirt and grease that's on the pin. Want to make sure this surface is nice and clean. This is the surface that actually seals on the reg seat. And take and just put a light amount of grease on the shaft of the pin. Put our spring in. Drop the pin in. And now we're ready to reassemble the reg seat assembly and put that back in. And again, same thing, make sure there's no dirt or grease on the inside here. This can cause a problem in the regulator if there's dirt and grease here. Same thing, clean it all out. Now you're going to snap the O-ring on the nose of the upper cage assembly or upper reg seat assembly. And then you're going to snap the lower reg seat assembly onto the O-ring. You don't want to do it in the opposite order. You don't want to try to put the O-ring in the lower part and then push the nose through the hole in the middle. If you do that, that can cause you to damage the O-ring, and it's much harder to put everything together that way. So we're going to take our wrench, we're going to install the assembly here, tighten this down, and again, when we go to do our final tightening here of this reg seat assembly, you're going to want to push down so you can compress this spring and get that as tight as you can get it with this wrench. That's going to make sure that you don't have a leak past this O-ring, which can cause problems. So then again, wipe the old grease and dirt off the piston, a little bit of grease. Now you want to just, again, lightly grease this piston. You don't want a lot. If you actually have too much grease, it can plug up these holes and cause issues. So just a light amount of grease. Again, rub a little bit of grease on that piston bore. You're going to reinstall the piston. Push it down. Once it's all the way to the bottom, you're going to push it down a couple times and make sure you can feel that you're compressing the spring. That makes sure that this piston is lined up properly inside. Now we're going to reassemble our spring stack. The spring stack is actually one opposing pair, or one single opposing one spring on the end, and then 5 pairs that we're going to put together here. There'll be a graphic up that'll show you exactly what the spring stack is supposed to look like. But again, it's 5 opposing pairs and 1 single opposing spring on each end. Look like so. And we're going to take this tool, we're going to line it up on the end of the piston shaft here, and then just drop those springs onto that piston. Take our adjuster, clean it up, put a little grease on this O-ring, reinstall that. Now we're going to tighten this adjuster down until it's about halfway in the holes here in the reg body. That'll be a nice low pressure, a good starting point. Reinstall our regulator cap. Wipe up the grease. And your regulator is now ready to be reinstalled on a tank and tested. Set your pressure, make sure everything's working fine. Now, some issues that you may have with the regulator, if you set the regulator to say 80 psi and you look back later and it's 85, 90, 100 psi, that's what's known as pressure creep. Now, pressure creep can be caused by one of 3 things in the regulator. It's either a leak around this O-ring here, you might have dirt or debris on there. The O-ring itself may be bad, but more than likely there's just some dirt and debris on there. Again, pull everything apart, make sure everything's clean. There could be a leak around this O-ring, and usually when that happens, it's because this regulator seat assembly has not been tightened down good enough into the regulator body. So make sure that this is tight. Again, could be dirt and debris on there, but usually it's because that's not tight. The third place we can have a leak is actually past this seal itself, where the regulator pin and this reg seat meet. So again, make sure that this surface is nice and clean. There's no dirt or debris on here. When you take this all apart, Make sure there's no dirt or debris here, no dirt or debris anywhere on this O-ring. You can have something inside here. You want to make sure this groove is clean, nothing there. Again, put it on the nose first. Snap the lower seat assembly onto there and put the whole works back together. Creep is usually the only issue we'll see on the regulator. Again, it's usually caused by dirt and debris, so as long as everything's clean, you should be in good shape. In that, make sure that when you're taking your regulator apart, you have a nice clean work surface. We recommend putting paper towels down so everything's nice and clean. You're not going to pick up any dirt on any greasy parts that you may sit back down on a dirty bench. And that's it. It's a very easy reg to maintain. You should have very few issues with it.